Today we'll be exploring people's thoughts about horror movies, their likes and their dislikes. She's scared. Are you?
I find that horror films in particular, for a Canadian independent producer or director, it's a genre that for me I felt was a little more doable as a filmmaker. Doable in terms of how I could compete with the Hollywood filmmakers in some sense. I mean, because you're a Canadian filmmaker, you're limited with your budget and resources and your access to stars and actors. So you're faced with a situation where you've got to concern yourself with story-driven product or projects that are slightly, I wouldn't say a whole lot easier, but tend to be a little easier to make and create in the horror genre.
I love horror movies. I like the thrill. I like the escapism. I like the fact that you can make a horror movie on a shoestring budget, and if you're clever enough, you can make it very, very effective. It does not have to be a blockbuster. You can be very inventive with makeup and effects, and it's a lot of fun to put these things together. The acting is number one. And if people can pull off those characters and make you believe that they're in those situations, it's just a thrill to be in like a theater in front of a DVD, you know, watching that kind of stuff. And the scale, I love the scaled down production because it forces people to be creative. The sound should serve the purpose of, sometimes identifying characters. It shouldn't give away too much. I don't even think in a lot of horror movies that there actually should be like too much score going on. Some of the best ones have very limited score. Or if there is musical score, it shouldn't necessarily always be musical instruments. Like symphonies, for me, do not go well with horror movies. It's like raw-sounding guitars, or even if you go back to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which I talk about a lot, it just sounds like junk metal and reverberation and just basically noise. There's a fine line between the music and noise in that particular project. And it doesn't leave you, it creeps you out. It's just gotta, kind of grab you. Actually, the funny thing is in The Exorcist, during the scariest scenes, there was no music whatsoever.
I have enjoyed certain horrific moments in cinema. I wouldn't say that I seek out movies strictly for their bloodbath quality. I like films that scare me. I like films that aren't too predictable. I like films like that. I like films that are character driven in the horror genre. I like ones that are, there's a clear psycho out there, a psychopathic person that is the embodiment of, the person that's causing all the melee on film. Like old ones like Freddy and Friday the 13th, and ones like Psycho by Hitchcock, Jason, Michael Myers, Leatherface, all those kind, Evil Dead even, that kind of thing. I also like horror that deals with anything ancient and legendary and like black magic and that kind of stuff. That stuff has a really kind of mysterious kind of quality to it, which I find very intriguing. I think it's right now. I think it's a little bit predictable. I think it's become a little bit of a gore fest. That kind of stuff I'm not really into per se, because it tends to be a little bit. I kind of know too much about, or I think I know too much about what the story's going to be about when I go in, and I'm not the kind of person that wants to see those kind of images. Like I'm a very visual person, so if I watch a really gory movie, I'm going to see those moments. I'm going to remember them, so I don't really usually seek them out. But I see a lot of that happening. I see a lot of fluff. I haven't seen a good story-driven, character-driven horror in a while.
It is tougher to do an independent thriller and get worldwide distribution on a product like that than it is in the horror genre. So I did venture into thrillers, however, I'm sort of swinging back more into horror. I'm currently in the post-production stage of my new feature called Abattoir, entitled Abattoir. It was written by an American, James McClung, very young writer. And for me, it is my first venture into much more of a gore, like a slasher type project or film. And originally, when I looked at doing it, I mean, I'm known more. I really am known more for the comedy horror genre rather than something so slasher. But I really wanted to be honest with you, I really wanted to see how far I could push practical special effects. It still affects me greatly when I see something that is scary on a screen.
No, I don't like horror movies. I find there's enough horror in my life. I don't need to watch it on the screen. The blood and the guts and just the horror of it. I go to a movie to laugh, maybe think a little, but more to laugh.
There are those people, though, that do hate horror films or hate the horror genre. And the only thing I could really say to that is that I think the horror genre in particular for Canadian filmmakers, I mean, you look at David Cronenberg, who did quite a few great horror films in his time. The horror genre in particular for Canadian filmmakers does open the cinema to their work, which is unlike any other. Canada can't compete with Hollywood in many other genres, but the one genre that we can compete with is that horror genre.
I don't think there's going to be, in my opinion, it's not going to be much changing because most of the people who are doing great horror movies are independent people, because that's how they get used to doing everything on a film set. So a lot of people start with comedies or horror because they're easy to do. They're not always easy to make effective, but they're easy to do. That's why a lot of people start with them. Peter Jackson even started with horror movies.
I think the thing that I think most people enjoy about horror films is that you are able to delve into a world for that hour and a half or those 90 minutes, and into a world that you would never be able to explore in your own reality. And it can be, for some people that enjoy it, quite a fun ride.
I usually don't like the old horror films because I don't like the cult films. I think they're really cheesy with bad acting, and I just don't get it, and it doesn't really scare me. But the newer horror films, such as The Haunting in Connecticut and The Blair Witch Project, I think are very innovative stories and very entertaining and frightful.
They're fun to watch, and it's a good experience. You know, go in, get scared, see some heads blow off, whatever, all that good stuff. It's fun times. I like the feeling of being sort of in that scenario, maybe thinking like, what would I do if I was there? Like, say there's a zombie apocalypse, like how would I survive it, kind of thing. And then I also like to see other people's take on it, like what they would do, and then again, there's just the horror slasher flicks where you just see people get their like limbs chopped off and there's blood everywhere. Those are always fun too.
As to the reason why, some people say horror is not a good thing for society, or they just don't understand why filmmakers would make it. I think everyone's got their own taste. Everyone's got their own vibe on what they like, and we can't really. We're not really, as filmmakers, we're not really the ones to decide on what culture or society should really watch and not watch or enjoy. It's a tough call. It's a tough call. But horror films, I think, will be around for quite a while. It's an interesting genre that is quite fun to produce.
So there you have it. Two sides of the argument. The choice is yours.